Hi, I'm Rob Cosman. Welcome to my new shop. This is my second in 3 years. I'm going to give you a shop tour of the new one. Stay with me. I'm Rob Cosman, and welcome to my shop. We make it our job to help take your woodworking to the next level. If you're new to our channel, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell, which will alert you whenever we release a new video. Anytime we use a new tool or technique, we'll leave a description down below so that make it easier for you to find. All right, let's get back to work. Let me give you a little bit of background so you'll understand where we're coming from. Back in 2018, we had outgrown the shop that we were in, and the building behind me started out way back in 1970 as a bake shop that was a business between my father and my soon later to be father-in-law. That lasted for about 10 years. 1979, 1980, they added to it and converted into a bowling lane. Well, that business ended, and in 2018, we occupied what was the old bowling alley. In fact, at the time, we thought we'd only need half of it, and we were going to put a curtain between the two so we wouldn't have to heat the whole thing. It wasn't long before we'd filled all of it. We'd actually built our classroom in there and our shipping room. Well, business continued to grow, so much so that we had to move out of there. That is just now, all that is now is production. And we took over a building on the back end that was another 4,000 square feet. It had been used for the last 20 years just as dead storage. So now we have our new shop ready. That building is going to encompass our new classroom, a dining hall, a kitchen, 2 bathrooms, a special quiet room for a lot of the vets that we bring in have had TBIs and they need somewhere to go and chill once in a while. And it's got my own shop. And my shop is going to be where we're going to do all of our filming, and I'll get to do all my work by myself. Let's go have a look. So I'm going to try to make this a helpful video where if you're setting up a shop, I'll give you some tips. I've been doing this for a fairly long time. This is, as I said, this is my third shop. My first shop started off behind my father's garage, and we had it crammed. Then we had our big shop over here behind me that you've seen already, and now we've moved into this space. So if you just take a quick look around, I'll try to bring up everything I can think of that might be of interest. First of all, the size. It's 24 wide, 36 long, which I think is a good space based on the amount of machinery and the fact that I'm going to be working in here by myself. The ceilings are 10-foot ceilings, which is really nice, especially when you're working on the table saw. And oftentimes you're cutting the end on something, a tenon for instance, and you're having to stand it up, so it's nice to have that extra space. We start at the very top. The lighting, Jake installed the lighting. These are LEDs, and we put in lots. So we didn't want any shadow anywhere. The only extra lighting I think we have is there's just a bench lamp. So, and the lighting doesn't cost much to purchase, nor does it cost much in terms of electricity. So really good choice, really good option. The ceiling was already kind of a flat white, so we left it, we didn't paint it. The exterior walls, so when we first came in here, this building was just one big open room. It's a steel fabricated building. It had pegboard all along the inside. So they had 2x4 framed walls, insulation, and pegboard. You look at the pegboard, you get dizzy. So we had to do something about that. Plus we also had an issue with condensation occurring on the inside of the metal wall and running down on the floor. That's another story. So we actually used MDF on the walls. So all of the walls are covered, or most all the walls are covered with 1/2-inch MDF, and we just used 1/4-inch MDF to break the seam. The color is a light gray, and that was chosen we knew we were doing a lot of filming in here, so that was a good background color, says somebody. Now, if you'll notice, we have that whole back wall is a steel rack, and part of this wall is a steel rack. Well, the occupants that were here left all these racks for us. So what we did to save money, we fastened by the way, this is a concrete floor with vinyl tile, and I'll explain why we have that vinyl coin over there in a moment. So we secured all of the racks with concrete screws and then stood 3/4-inch by 4-foot by 10-foot sheets of MDF floor to ceiling. And that literally is our wall all the way back there and halfway up to here. The other side of that wall is our dining hall, and the other side of that wall is the classroom. We had a lot of extra glass because this was a retail store at one time, so they had kind of an inside, I forget what you call it, but it was cased in glass where people would come in one door. There'd be a little bit of a reception area before they stepped into and through another door into the retail space. So we put the glass here. I thought it would be kind of nice to get a little bit of daylight, and we used all kinds of used materials. So these doors were just surplus from the folks that were in here. They left them behind, and I thought it was interesting that one of the ones we grabbed was purple. With our Purple Heart project, we left it purple. This is actually a 2x4 frame wall. We had to in order to hang the doors and also to put the glass in. Now, what happened with the floor, the water was condensing on the steel, running underneath, and it was loosening up all the tile. So we actually were finding water underneath these tiles 8 feet out from the ceiling. And the wall, sorry. So what we did is we laid down what's called, what is it? It's coin. It's a heavy vinyl with just a little bit of it's a round, they call it coin for obvious reasons, but it gives you a little bit of traction. It's easy to sweep, and it's not so bad to stand on all day long. Okay, dust collection. So we bought, and it's really advantageous to have your hobby, your business, because everything you do is a business expense. So we bought an Oneida system. It's a 5-horse or 3? A 3-horsepower unit with a big cyclone. But I really didn't want to have it in here. It's noisy and it takes up a lot of extra space. So we have that. We are 5 feet from the original shop. So what you'll see is this 7-inch line going through the wall. And that goes into the other building. And in the other building is where our dust collecting unit is. This big 9-inch opening is where the return air comes through. So if you look up above, and we had all the ductwork actually manufactured for us, all of the joints. We use what's called spiral pipe. And you'll find out that if your dust collecting is of a certain power, you need that spiral pipe as opposed to the snap-together stuff that is typically used in a forced air situation in a home. It'll collapse, it has a tendency to collapse. This stuff is really strong. And it's all put together with, what's that called?
Duct seal.
Duct seal, so no leaks. You know, you'll also, so we start off with 7-inch line. The first thing we did, and I'm just going to walk you through this, we drop it down, we've got a 4-inch Y, and that drops down to a floor sweep, which, you know what, is really nice when it comes to cleaning. And I'm not a big fan of cleaning, but instead of having to find dustpans all over the place, to be able to just bring it there and it sucks it up, it's great. We have shut-offs. These are, what are these called? Blast gates. We have both automatic and manual, and that's really nice too, because even the biggest dust collector, you're not going to have all your machines open all the time. So it's nice to be able to shut them off when you don't need them. Then we come across here, and there's a Y right there that takes a 6-inch line, and the 6-inch line comes across. This is the one exception where we went into the wall. We had to redo this wall anyway, and I wanted to be able to put the chop saw as far back into the wall as possible so it wasn't out into the floor space. And with this corrugated steel, we were able to pick up about 8 inches of space. So when we tore this apart, we had spray foam put on the inside of the steel to avoid the condensation problem. So while we had the wall apart, we put the ductwork, it enters the wall here and then comes up underneath, and there's a hole back in here. And this is called well, it's made by a company called Rousseau. Yeah, Rousseau 5000, which is great for gathering the dust around a chop saw. This can be one of the biggest dust generators in the entire shop. So that 4-inch line goes down in through here, comes up through the bottom, and that's an automatic blast gate. So as soon as I turn on the saw, that gate will open, and it stays on. When I shut the saw off, the dust collector will continue to run. You can set this for 15 seconds, I think we have it. So that means that your dust collector doesn't shut off before you make your next cut, which is really convenient. All right, so from there we drop down our next takeoff, again, is another 4-inch Y coming off the 7-inch line, and that feeds our combination disc sander. That's a 16-inch disc sander with a 6x48 belt. And then we're over then we Y off on a 6, drops down to a 4, drops down to a 3, and that takes care of dust collection for our big 20-inch bandsaw. Our next one, we Y off a 6 onto a 4. That takes care of our table saw. And you use a piece of flex hose on the bottom 8 feet of it or so, just makes it a lot more convenient. And then that one also comes over. Now this is one of the biggest draws in your whole shop is going to be your thickness planer. So that's a 6-inch line, automatic dust blast gate feeding the 6-inch, and that's an automatic blast gate 4-inch on the table saw. We've got another 4-inch line dropping off here. This takes care of our 8-inch jointer, and that too has an automatic blast gate. And then our line drops down to 4, and the last thing we do is we pick up for our lathe. And this can be a dirty job, and I use a lathe a lot, so this is just a piece of flexible 4-inch line that you can just position it anywhere you want, and it'll stay put. So it's nice to have dust collection. The first couple of years that I was in a shop, we didn't have any dust collection, and you couldn't see through the place at the end of the day, and you were knee-deep in shavings. So we've got a large lumber rack out there, and that's where I keep all of my lumber. So I want to be able to have this flow nicely without a whole lot of excess moving around, which, by the way, one of the disadvantages to the previous shop was that it was so big. It was 70 feet by 35 feet, which was a lot of walking. So I come in here with my rough lumber. First thing I'm going to do is go over to my chop saw. I've never used a chop saw for anything more than rough cutting lumber to length. It does not give you the kind of precision that I want on a piece of furniture. So I would cut it down to a little bit longer than what I need. I would go from there over to my jointer, and this is where I would face joint. And face joint meaning make one side, one surface flat, and I would also make one edge square to that flat surface. Then I would come over here, very few steps, run it through my thickness planer, and now I would have the bottom and the top parallel to each other, nice and smooth. My next move would be over here, and using my table saw, I would rip the opposite side, so my board now has top and bottom parallel, both edges parallel, and from there I'll process it further, but most of that is going to occur right around here. I did buy this new. Couldn't take my last one because I needed it over there. And this is a Bosch, and the reason I bought this one, and by the way, it's only a 10-inch. I didn't bother with the big ones because, like I said, I don't use it for anything other than just cut off. But this, what's this called, this knuckle?
I think it's articulating.
What's nice about this is it doesn't go very far back. A lot of them have rods that they run on, and the rods have to go back in. I purposely wanted something that would be as compact as possible this way to keep this on that side of the room and keep lots of open space. Now, what's a little bit different for us than maybe for your shop is that we do a lot of filming in here. So I've got to be aware that Jake has to be able to get around, and that's why we left lots of room on all the way around the bench. So this, I think, was a great... I've used it enough to tell you that I'm really happy with it. No complaints at all. Easy to move if you are going to use it for whatever angles, and it'll go both sides, but like I said, I'm not into that. So what I did different, or what I added to this, was we needed to have extension tables because typically you're dealing with lumber that's anywhere from 8 to 12 feet long, and you want to have it supported. So as one of our projects on our online workshop, we decided to build a unit that would give us the support on either side, as well as some storage space. Always got to have some dovetails somewhere, and a cart that we can put all of our scraps in, and because it's on wheels, it's easy to maneuver and take it out and leave it at the front and let people come pick up our scraps if they want them for firewood. And yes, that's dovetailed because how else would you put it together? Out here on the top corners where I keep all of my clamps, I'll probably have to share them with the other shop, but what you see on this side is mirrored on the opposite side, and it's on wheels, so instead of having to carry your clamps, you can take the whole rack with you, and there's a whole variety. By the way, I love Bessie F clamps. I find I use them more and more. In fact, we've got pipe clamps hanging on the wall, and they don't get used very often. They're almost, hate to admit, they're almost shop decoration. Okay, move down this way. I only have 2 pieces of new equipment, and I'll talk about them right now. I mentioned the Bosch chop saw. The other one is the saw stop. And this is the industrial version. It's got a 3 horsepower motor. I don't need for anything any bigger than that. Best saw that I think has ever been built. I would do commercials for them for free. Not only is it great that it has the safety feature, and we've had it tripped in our shop numerous times, including fingers, all saved, but it's just extremely well built. It's got a nice, great big table, the power transmission. I actually we did a review on this. I'll leave it in a description down below, and you can check it out for yourself, but that one's brand new. We just installed it a couple of months ago. What I didn't talk about in the review is we bought this additional extension, which I really like. It folds down. All you have to do is bring the 2 legs in, and you can actually drop that down if you need the extra space behind here. Fortunately, we don't have to, so we leave it up, but it's a really nice feature. So here's my thickness planer, and I want to talk to you about saving money. This was built before 1964. I know that because it's general, and this particular tag, that design was used before 1964. It looked pretty rough when we bought it. Didn't pay a whole lot of money for it, but we managed to get the original general green paint, and probably spent a day with an abrasive block getting off rust, and cleaned off all the oil and debris. Pretty much took it all apart, painted all the pieces. I used to spray them, but I found that the paint that they use, you don't need to. Painted with a brush, just careful not to get it on the label so that it looks sloppy, and it turns out it looks almost brand new and still works great. The nice thing about old machines, belts, bearings, and motors. Those 3 can all be easily and relatively inexpensively replaced. As long as you don't have broken or cracked castings, these things will outlive you. All right, let's step over here to a jointer. This is a Delta 8-inch, and this would probably date before 1980, probably back into the 70s. It was made in the United States, and if you're going to buy Delta, buy the stuff that was made in the US. I'm not a fan of it after that. What we did here is we put in the bird segmented head, and these are the little carbide chiclets, and there's no better device to improve a jointer than that. It's fantastic. And 8-inch capacity, there's times when I wish I'd had it a little bit bigger. I've actually got a 16-inch over in the other shop that I'll go over and use if I need to, but for the most part, I probably very rarely need something wider than 8 inches. And what do we got? Horse and 3/4? 1 3/4 horsepower motor. Probably could have used a little more horsepower, but we can get by with that. And that too is hooked up, so as soon as you turn it on, the blast gate opens, the dust collector starts, and keeps the shop nice and clean. Down here, this is a general 260 lathe. Bought this, actually had a fellow contact me and said, Rob, I'm all done with my lathe, would you like to buy it? And I paid him what he was asking for, which was a really good deal. It came almost in that condition, so it was taken care of, and it's been, I now have 3 or 4, 5 of these. We use them a lot in our production, and it's a great heavy-duty machine. Again, it'll outlast most people. We just recently built this cabinet in the back to store all of our chisels and implements. It's nice to have them nice and handy, and really an advocate of having dust collection at your lathe, particularly if you're sanding, to be able to get rid of that nuisance dust. All right, over here in this corner. I debated on whether or not we were going to keep this, and we did a review on this one. We can put a link in there for that as well. But it's another old piece of Rockwell Delta equipment. It's a 20-inch bandsaw. If you look underneath and you see all of the adjustments for the guides, that's where it really proves that when they built these, they built them with a lot of thought. Everything is micro-adjusted, just a fantastic saw. I was a little bit surprised to find aluminum wheels on it, but it runs well. It's got lots of power. It's got a brake, which is nice to be able to slow that as soon as you need. And it too has dust collection, although we didn't put a blast gate on this one. We just put a manual gate. Doesn't get used quite as much. Nice to have a good fence. This is the old Jetlock fence, which I think, although it's kind of dated now, it was a really good fence. You could push this knob in, and by doing so, you could get a micro adjustment. And then when you locked it, it locked front and back. Good and sturdy. Great piece of equipment. And we move up here. This is a combination 16-inch disc sander with a 6x40 8-inch belt sander. Another piece of general Canada equipment. This was pretty rough looking when we bought it. Spent a day, took it all apart, repainted everything, got off some surface rust, and turned it into a machine that looks almost brand new. I can't even remember what's running this, do you? Is it a 2-horse? It's a 2, maybe even a 3-horsepower motor. This belt will actually lay flat, so you can use it horizontally or you can use it vertically. This was an option on the machine, and I'm glad we got it because it's nice to have that extra table. And the other nice thing about this too is when it comes to adjusting this table, there's actually a crank on there. A lot of them is just, in fact, I've got another one which is a well-made machine, but as soon as you loosen the 2 knobs, it falls. So you've got to hold it and try to adjust it the way you want it. With one hand, you're holding the table. The other hand, you've got the knob down here, and you need a third person to come in and actually hold your gauge. With this, you loosen them up, and you can just turn the dial one way or the other as it tilts the table, which is a great feature. Now, this just came in today. Here's another example of buying old equipment at a decent price. I got it at an auction, and most of these auctions I've done are all online. This is a 10-inch grinder, although we've got an 8-inch CBN wheel on there, and it's a 1 horsepower. It's nice and heavy. We don't even have to bolt it to the floor. We haven't cleaned it up yet, but we will. But this will be a great addition. I love these big, heavy old machines, and we're going to modify the tool rest on there. In this corner is our drill press, another piece of general equipment. Again, it was kind of ratty looking, but we haven't finished painting it, but it's looking pretty good all right already. Something interesting about general is none of the standard models had any way of adjusting the table up and down. This one did, and this was a piece of additional equipment that they actually sold, and it was almost the cost of what you would pay for a drill press today that actually has all those features. But this was a crank that would allow you to move it up and down. Great piece of old equipment. What I really appreciate about this is the fact that there's no run out in the quill. Most of the machines you buy today, you extend that quill down there and you can shake it an eighth of an inch and move your drill bit an eighth of an inch. All right, that's all the equipment. We are going to bring in another piece. We've got a big old hollow chisel mortiser that we're going to bring in. We've got to restore it, and that'll find a spot somewhere in here. So this is going to be the fun part. This is the shop furniture. I love building anything that's a box that has dovetails in it, and there's lots of excuses to build stuff like that in here. But it's also nice to have things organized so that you know where they are. I can't tell you how much time I spend running around looking for something and not remembering where I set it down last. Trying to change that. So let's start over in this corner. Lots of gadgets that are used around the drill press. So I built this little unit, and I decided, I'm not sure why, to build everything with two different woods. Douglas fir, the drawer fronts, and northern white pine for the case. So everything we're going to do, and you're going to see that theme repeated. So these are just somewhat shallow drawers. So I've got fish bits in here that are expensive, but they work beautifully. And most of these aren't actually finished yet. I'm sorry, they're not finished, but they haven't been filled yet. We haven't quite completed our entire move. But nice and easy. No hardware, only gets in the way. These are all just half of a hole, rounded off on the inside, so you can stick your finger in there and pull it out. Lots of dovetails. I didn't put any finish on that. I regret that. I'm going to go back and put finish on. So I had to hide this electrical panel. So I decided to build a cabinet around it. The inside of the mitered pine frames are pieces of Douglas fir. And then up here, it's just that wire running up. So we'll put some shelving in there and store stuff that I can't reach, so I'll never need. Now, this is my tool cabinet, and there's an ongoing history here. This is the finished part of it down below, still prototype phase up here. And as we work with it and finally decide that we have everything the way we want it, we go in and we go from plywood and pine to bird's eye maple and mahogany. And like I said, we're finished to here. The drawers are almost ready to go, and then we're just finishing this part over here, which is going to house some more things. I can't even remember them all. And then this section still has to be done. And if you're curious about the stuff in the back, we run a program called the Purple Heart Project, where 6 times a year we bring in combat wounded veterans and we treat them to a 6-day very intense hand tool workshop. Hence the reason we built that big new shop, but that'll be for another video. Okay, so over here, I've decided the other day, you can't imagine how much time I spend in my day looking for those, looking for this, and looking for these magnifiers. So I decided we need a little cabinet right here that is just deep enough to house all of those, a single door, and that's going to be one of our next projects. So all of that stuff will have a home. Over here, in my previous shop, I had a fairly large cabinet over here that just housed stuff that needed a home, but I frequently used. I left it over there because they needed it, so I'm going to build one for right here, and it'll be done the same way. The frame will be out of pine, and the panels, and if there is a drawer, I don't think there's going to be, but if there is, it'll be done out of Douglas fir. Over here, I explained all of this. There's these drawers are really deep. They go all the way to the back. We made this one big enough that we could actually put blades in here. And then there's the same size one over here that hasn't even got anything in it yet. And I just found that when we did this in our other shop, it was really convenient to have something that you could move around. And of course, as I mentioned, they had to be dovetailed because we want to stay together, and I'd be harassed if I didn't do it. So come down here a little bit farther. We had this empty space, and we end up doing a fair bit with metal, and I hate doing anything like that on my good bench. So I thought what we need is we need a good bench that we can mount our vise on. So we built this patterned after my the Cosman workbench that we designed back in 2012, and we can leave you a link to that as well. What we did different here is instead of all plywood and MDF, we used plywood on the trestles. We used Douglas fir, again, to match everything else, for the stretchers. But on the top, instead of MDF, we used 3 pieces of 1-inch Baltic birch. Experimenting with that to see how it was turned out, quite happy with it. Nice and rugged, and an easy, quick build. Doesn't take very long at all. You'd be surprised. Over here, we need one more small cabinet just because there's some small items that get lost in the dust. So we're going to build something that's fairly shallow. I'm not a fan of deep cabinets. If it goes beyond about 6 inches, you got to move so much junk to find what's in the back. It's not worth it. So we'll keep it shallow, and if anything, lots of shelves and wider if we need. I'm thinking one door, and just a small unit that'll fit somewhere up in here for stuff that just you need occasionally. Okay. I have a big collection of exotic woods. I've got burls that friends have given me. We've got a good friend named Ahmed down in Southern California that supplies me with some of the prettiest wood. There's some Macassar ebony that he sent me that's going to be turned into saw handles. And that's one of the things that I'm going to be doing over here. So I keep all of this stuff, but it was just moved by some of our employees, so it's all scattered. This all has to be gone through and organized and categorized. And if you're wondering about the airplanes, if I have the time, I love to fly remote control airplanes with the kids. And that's going to have to find a new home too. But this will all end up just being my collection of wood. All right, so the final thing that we have yet to solve, and I kind of forgot about it, is where to store the hand power tools. I've got a couple of options. This big empty space underneath the saw stop is perfect for a rollout cart that they could be stored in. We were looking at this space underneath this cabinet, and this bench. We could easily build a cabinet in here that we could store power tools. However, we typically use them up here, so we have space right here. This really isn't anything that's being utilized, and we have space over here. So somewhere in those 4 spots, we'll design and build some kind of I think I want it to be somewhat portable, but a space to keep things like cordless drills and jigsaw and routers. Yeah, I got tons of routers. So even though I do mostly hand tools, or a lot of hand tools, there is a place for power tools, and I've got to find a place for them. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, leave them in the section below, and we'll try to get to them. A couple things that you may be interested in. We do a live YouTube workshop every second Saturday night where we have a different theme, and this is an opportunity for you to come on and ask questions, and we'll gladly answer them for you. And the final thing is, we have a newsletter that we put out once a month that is packed full of information. It always has a topic, And that I think you'd enjoy. You can go there to my website. We'll leave a link below and you can get that, and it's a lot of free content. Hope you enjoyed this. If you like my work, if you like my style of teaching, click on any one of these videos to help take your woodworking to the next level. And I've always said better tools make it a whole lot easier. If you click on the icon with the plane and the chisel, it'll take you to our website, introduce you to all of our tools, and also talk to you about our online and in-person workshops. Good luck in your woodwork.